talking about SPS matters, and we are looking beyond the regulation. What are the options that, in your view and from your experience, you think that the food business operators have at their hand so that we are able to have this aspect being pushed forward? So I will give you each a maximum of 2 minutes, and if you can use one, the better. I can see you're laughing. If you can use one, the better, so that we are able to get into this aspect of, you want me to start from the Secretariat? All right, the Secretariat, you have been chosen.
My name is Diana Akulo. I am with the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat. I don't want to take a roll call and ask how many of you know about the AFCFTA, but I'm from the AFCFTA Secretariat. I coordinate the sanitary and phytosanitary work, specifically coordinating the implementation of Annex 7 that has been referred to this morning several times. Thank you very much.
Shiruba Mwape is my name. I'm a senior advisor, sanitary and phytosanitary at the African Union Commission. Thank you.
I think he has been very brief because he was here, but I'm not sure whether he has said what he does in this space of SPSS. Okay, but I'll come back to you. As the introduction continues, I want to apologize from my list. I think I'm missing one more person, and that is a representative from ARSO, African Organization for Standards. Bwana Kirwa. Hello? Bwana Kirwa, you are the one representing ARSO. Yes, so you need to be in the podium. Very sorry, it was missing here, but I remember you need to be in the podium. So, you want to choose to be closer to me or there, next to the Secretariat? The Secretariat seems to be loved. All right, go ahead.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Gerald Masila. I serve at the Eastern Africa Grain Council, which is a regional membership organization, council of farms and organizations that are in the grain value chain in 10 countries in the Eastern Africa region. And as a council, we exist to serve our members. We provide our members with market information. We do training and capacity building through our institute, the Grain Business Institute. We do policy advocacy work, representing them in various fora to provide them a voice. And we also do trade linkages for our members through the GSOCO trading platform. And in this exhibition and expo, I have counted almost close to 15 or 20 members of EAGC who are in this room. So thank you very much for inviting us.
You haven't told us why maize is not in Kenya, but I'll come back to you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jane Musindi. I'm representing the Agriculture Sector Network, which we say is the voice of agriculture in Kenya. We are a private sector umbrella body, and we've been brought together through a partnership of KEPSA, Kenya Private Sector Alliance, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, CAM, and KNCCI, the Kenya National Chamber of Industry, with support from the UN SDG Partnership Program. What we do within SPS is basically to get the private sector to speak in one voice, and to advocate on issues that affect private sector in one voice to government. And as Andrew put it, that private sector also needs to organize itself to do industry self-regulation. So that is an aspiration for us. Thank you.
Great. Arso?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Emmanuel Kirwa, representing the Secretary General, Dr. Hemojin Sengimana, who is equally engaged in other activities. The African Organization for Standardization is a continental body that was established by the African Union way back in 1977 with a mandate to harmonize standards for the continent and conformity assessment systems. So that is in brief ARSO. The countries that have ratified the AFCFTA agreement by virtue of their ratification, as you've had Annex 6 and Annex 7, it binds members to utilize international standards, and where there are non-existing international standards for products which are of unique in the continent, they use standards that has been developed by ARSO member states, which are African standards. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Bwana Kirwa, just a quick one, if you could take a minute to just explain. You know, for Kenya, we know there is Kenya Bureau of Standards. But then for the last more than 10 years, we have also had East African standards. Now we are being told there is African standards. Not forgetting that there are also other international standards. What is all this from everywhere standard, yet food safety and SPS matters are still trouble. Now you are Africa. Now tell us, what is the difference and what are you doing in this space?
Thank you very much, Prof. First of all, it's to the understanding the levels. There are national standards, there are sub-regional standards, there are regional standards, sub-region in the sense that we have the regional economic communities recognized by the African Union. There are 8, but there are those which are having the mandate of developing the standards within the region. Then those are now clustered as sub-regional standards. Then we have regional standards. Region in that the continent of Africa is a region, America is a region, Asia is a region, yeah, and all that. Then now we have the international standards. I've seen AOSC, ASTM, ISO, IEC. So the genesis of having standards within national EAC and ECOWAS, SADC was because of the vision which our members, presidents of then, the forefathers saw, and they established what is called the African Economic Community. The treaty that established the regional economic communities is embedded within how the integration process will happen. And therefore, the establishment of the regional economic communities was for that they are able to harmonize the standards within the region, which may be of unique within that region. For example, ECOWAS, they may be having products which are unique to ECOWAS. They're similar to SADC, similar to EAC, and all that. Yeah. So the reason why we have these standards is that they address the products traded within that space. Now, the continental body, for example, the treaty establishing COMESA, then they said we are not going to harmonize our standards because we recognize in our treaty there is a continental body. You can recall COMESA cuts across many regions. Therefore, in the treaty establishing COMESA, it was highlighted that our African Organization for Standards will be developing the standards, but then the member states of COMESA will now be adopting the standards what we do.
Oh,
so
okay.
let me bring this issue. Look, for example, COMESA. Kenya is a member of COMESA. Kenya is a member of EAC. Therefore, which standard will Kenya use? So therefore, there is need to harmonize the continental standards, where now we are working with the regional economic communities. We have a framework whereby there is identification of priority of which products will be given to the continental harmonization, and then the others that would be done by the region. Thank you.
That's interesting. Now, talking about regional economic committees, Bwana Chiluba Mwape, since 2019, I'm aware that AU Commission committed itself to enhancing collaboration within Africa, and especially in the institutions and working with these regional economic committees, and to promote partnership and support the AU members in key strategic areas contained in AU SPS policy framework. Could you just give us a brief on the progress so far, and if the goal is achieved, if not yet, what are the challenges, the barriers?
Thank you, moderator. Yeah, indeed, the African Union sanitary and phytosanitary policy framework is in place. And when you look at the policy framework, it is actually aligned with the provisions of the international standards, the international standard setting bodies. You look at the International Plant Protection Convention, you look at the World Organization for Animal Health, you look at the Codex Alimentarius Commission. All these provisions are embedded or reflected in the SPS policy framework. Now, when you look at the regional economic communities, they all have their own respective SPS policy framework. And the African Union believes that the regional economic communities are the building blocks for AU. As such, their policy frameworks are supposed to be aligned with the continental SPS policy framework. Yes, in order to make sure that this policy framework is implemented, again, Africa Union Commission has been facilitating, together with the USDA, the development of the respective strategies for the three sisters. And these strategies also, to be implemented, we need to develop the action plans. Mr. Moderator, the development of the action plans is actually in progress. And to make sure that at continental level, there is proper coordination in the management of SPS issues, AU has come up with the coordination forum for SPS.
Okay.
And the international cooperating partners are members to this forum, and they give reports together with the RECs.
Beautiful.
However, what we don't know is what other international cooperating partners are doing in other regions. So AUC is actually embarking on doing a mapping exercise so that we know exactly who is doing what and where. You may find that some of the regions are receiving more than they need, and some of the regions have got a deficit of donors. I submit.
You have just said that you are now in a position to start mapping what is happening where. But when I map it, this is 4 years down the line. Do you want to say you have not been mapping anything? Or, and how has been the adoption anyway?
Thank you very much, moderator. It's 4 years down the line. We have some scores. I talked about the SPS strategies, the food safety and the plant health. It's a roadmap.
Yes.
And the SPS policy framework provides that roadmap.
Correct.
However, work has been going on with respect to capacity building. We've been conducting some training on good regulatory practices. We've also been planning to do some training on risk-based inspections, as well as conducting risk assessments, so that the food and agricultural commodities that are moving in trade are not posing any threat to human beings, livestock, and the environment at large. We heard in the morning there was a talk on environmental risk assessment, and we are also working with the seed industry to make sure that even the seed that is moving in trade doesn't pose any danger. I submit.
So you see some progress already. I will come back to it, because 4 years is like you're going to look for more people going to election after every 4 or 5 years, and then they come with more promise. Let me come to the secretariat sitting next to you, and could you just give us in 1 minute whether maybe how important is the compliance of SPS, how important it means to the acceleration of implementation of the African continental free trade area. And number two, the adoption of Annex 7, which has been talked about. I've heard you talk about it, I've heard Mwebe talk about it, and it's like I'm going to get out of this room with Annex 7 in my head. Domestication of the same. What is the progress among African countries or states?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think you set a precedent where you are not giving the two speakers time limit.
I am giving them by looking at their eye.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we are all aware now that the adoption of the AFCFTA agreement was really a landmark move for our continent, because as you are aware, the AFCFTA is one of the largest free trade area there is currently in the world, with a market of more than 1.2 billion people. Now, when you have a huge market like that, and as we are also aware that Africa's population is very youthful, we have a high population growth. There is definitely increased demand for food. There is a lot of movement or trading in food commodities. Even when you look at our own trend, continental trading trend, we trade more in agricultural commodities than other commodities. So why is SPS measures very important? They will be very important because they will be the basis on which we will be protecting our population. Professor earlier on talked about the high rate of foodborne diseases in Africa. We do not want that to continue happening. So we must ensure that complying with SPS measures helps us to, feed our continent with the right kind of food, and we also protect our animals and plants. And also it allows people to have confidence in the commodities that they're consuming, in the products they're consuming from within Africa. Because one of the reasons that the leaders of Africa came together and said, we are exporting our jobs by importing foods from outside the continent, was a big problem. So we want to ensure that people have faith in the commodities that we are going to be trading within Africa.
All right.
Now you ask another.
The progress made so far.
The progress
in
made so far.
adoption, yes.
Now the AFCFTA is being implemented using a number of instruments and tools. So one of the instruments is the annexes. For example, the annex on SPS is one of the annex under the protocol on trade in goods. Ever since the operationalization of the Secretariat, we've been in a position to develop a work program that now helps us to work with state parties in implementing, in responding to their various obligations listed under the annex. So we have established a subcommittee to ensure that we are implementing the annex. I think another important point, you'll give me 30 seconds.
Just a minute. A subcommittee establishment does not indicate progress.
Well, depending on how you look at it, because the annex doesn't go around implementing itself.
All right.
It's a governance structure. So we have the subcommittee.
To help you.
Yes,
all right.
push the work. So secondly, you will have heard that recently, to kickstart trading within Africa,
correct,
we initiated the guided trade initiative. We started operationalizing.
All right.
In 2022, in October, we kick-started with 7 countries. It's an initiative that matches, it's a matchmaking sort of initiative. And how we were very instrumental in, I think Dr. Dewa spoke about this, the importance of supporting food business operators. We were able to go and share with them what kind of regulations exist in the countries they're exporting into, so that they would be aware and be able to comply with all this. So work is going on.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Just in addition to what my sister has contributed, ARSO actually is part of that subcommittee. So
all right.
One of the things I think the FCFTA has done is to bring on board who is involved in what endeavor in this Annex 6 and Annex 7.
Yeah, so the two of you, you know about the subcommittee, but my question was, what is the progress beyond the subcommittee? I'm coming back, don't worry. Don't worry. You have mentioned Dr. Dewa, but I'll come to Dr. Dewa. Let me go to East African Grain Council. You know, when we talk of East Africa, you are the East African Grain Council. So I don't know why you are passing. First of all, tell us why maize is not there, but not very important. For now, we want to know how is it been for you to comply to SPS measures across the region, and how your members actually, whether your members are adopting these measures or they have to be pushed to adopt, and what could be the barriers for compliance, if any?
Thank you very much for the question. Sitting here representing my members who are grain producers, they are grain traders, they do cross-border trade, they process foods that you enjoy in your homes, and in the work we do, we work within the regulations of the jurisdictions that we operate from. And one of the regulations is the one to do with food safety in the foods that we produce and that we present to our consumers through the markets. Now, as an organization and as a private sector association, we have been actively engaged with governments, first of all, in the development of the standards and harmonizing them in various jurisdictions. We started with the ESC, where from 2013 to 2017, we've come up with a whole set of over 40 harmonized standards. And that harmonization of the standard was a big step in dealing with a lot of disagreements that used to occur in trade across the borders when you would order grade 1 of a certain specification that would be different from the other one. In the standard, you have two parts of it. One part addresses the safety measures, and those are the SPS requirements that are mandatory. And then there's a part that now looks at grading, which is now more about other factors that are important but don't touch on safety. So what are we doing as an organization and our members to ensure that we comply to standards? So first of all, we come from the view that we don't need to be whipped to do the right thing, and that we should, as an organization, and as members who subscribe to the code of conduct, we want and we are working towards ensuring that we voluntarily comply to the standards through an industry self-regulatory process, an ISR process. And in that process, right from the farmers, where we are aggregating their outputs, we're ensuring certain things must happen that confirm to us that there will be food safety. What are these things? Number one, we're insisting that whatever you put through the market, you sample. As per the standard, we now have a standard for sampling. Before 2017, we were using different ways. We have a standard for sampling. We have a standard for testing for all the various grains and cereals, so that the sampling is done, the testing is done, and that what is being put in the market has been confirmed, certified to be conforming to the standards. And that's something we are pushing through the farmer groups, to the warehouses, to the millers, and ensuring that our members are complying and are offering the market what meets the safety requirements.
Just on that, because it seems there is already what Andrew was saying, self-regulation within your members. How do you create awareness, and how do you enable or ensure that they voluntarily do this?
So, first of all, the whole process of creating the industry self-regulation process has been very participatory, and I must thank Dr. Edewa because he supported
number one,
us.
participatory.
Very participatory.
Right.
And we got support from Dr. Edewa, from our colleagues from USAID, and other colleagues, and we worked very closely with government, the regulators, to be able to do this together. So in developing the principles and the building blocks of industry self-regulation, we've done it in a participatory and in a partnership process.
Yes.
And we are also trying to demonstrate through our communication and our engagement, stakeholder engagement, which is the other key pillar, we are demonstrating the value to comply and the cost to
value
business.
to compliance.
Yes, and the cost to business when you don't comply. And we've seen it. We saw when Kenya blocked the borders and there was serious losses as a result. So we are keen to that. And those are the motivation and the incentives that are driving us to voluntarily. Of course, we require a lot more instruments to make that happen, and doing it in a way that government is also having visibility of what we are doing.
So everybody is in the picture, and you
very transparent.
That's very important to note. Do you at any point then involve my sister here in the process? Does it the civil society, the people who do a lot of advocacy and create awareness? You don't need to answer that. Let her answer whether they are part of the process like that before. Just telling us how much advocacy you have had to do in order to ensure that SPS matters are actually entrenched within the food business operators and people who are involved.
Thank you, Professor. Let me just say Gerald is one of our very able members at ASNET.
Because you are sitting together? Or?
No, he's our member at ASNET. And part of the reason ASNET came up is because we realized that some industry players were stronger than others. So what he's saying, it can be replicated in other industry bodies. But at the moment, we have very weak systems in some of our industries. industry bodies. They are really regulated by government almost fully. And we need to get out of that government regulation to more of the industry players themselves being aware of what they are required to do. So we use expertise from people like EAGC to be able to impart knowledge and train up the other industry players, because ASNET is all industry, coffee, tea, horticulture, everything agriculture. So with EAGC, they are very well, their systems are very superior. So we need the other industry players also to catch up with him. So yes, we collaborate a lot, Prof.
And I am not sure to what extent you have been able to be involved in the informal sector when it comes to awareness creation. Not only informal sector, but this sector has got a lot of women and youth in it. What role or what can we do as a society to ensure they also embrace these measures, which of course lead to a better society in terms of food safety?
Okay, let me just start by saying this. For a long time, SPS issues from a private sector point of view were a government problem. So there was little trust between the private sector and the government. So anything the government came up with was really, it was pushed back hard by the private sector. So up until 2013, for example, within the horticulture industry, I think you remember when we had problems with interceptions in the EU market, and the only problem was the information government had was very different from the information the market had about Kenya. Okay. So when DG Sante came to investigate why we had a problem and to study our systems, government, of course, private sector were under reporting throughout, because we think if we report the actual volumes, the taxes will go up. So they had like 10% of the quantities that the EU market confirmed to be going through their borders from Kenya. So that is why we had a problem with our inspections went up to almost 50% for a while, until we could show that the government has control on whatever the industry was doing. So we had to work together to ensure that there is synergy within the information system.
Good.
Now, the information available on SPS is very scientific, and scientists generally do not know how to communicate. I know that.
Can you repeat that? So you mean so that includes me?
Everyone. A scientist has facts.
We have facts.
So they will give you facts.
In jargons.
But they don't know how to argue their information.
All right.
Private sector basically just understands money. How much can I make from this? So it was necessary now to have a middle person to get the information from the scientists, simplify it, and give it to the private sector. That's why the civil society has really risen, because before the civil society that we were used to was the people that go on the streets
and
with placards.
Carry the placards.
Yes.
Yeah.
So right now, we know there's a civil society function of disseminating information. And this information needs to be evidence-based. So there's a technical aspect to what civil society does. Now, going back to our involvement with the informal traders.
The youth and the women in the all sector. Yeah.
Now, we take that information, put it in simplified training pamphlets, so they are not manuals, and we give them to the youth and the women. And if you look at what the government has done in the ASTGS, which is the Agriculture Sector Transformation and Growth Strategy, they have specified that the youth will offer digital extension services and the women will offer the food safety services.
Okay.
So we need to upgrade these two groups to offer the services that has been given to them,
Good.
So what we are doing is being able to upgrade the knowledge that these two groups have so that they can offer those services to our members without having too much of antagonism between us and the government.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Now, allow me, because you have talked of something which I have tied to Andrew. Andrew, your organization has been very, do we call it vocal, pronounced, notorious, popular on SPS matters. I don't know which one is the best one to describe because I am limited in English. If you allow me, I would have added our own Kenyan Latin. But you have been trying to implement this, and now you have moved from East Africa, now you're Africa. I used to know TMA, now I'm now changing to TMA. TMA was easier, now TMA is now too short, but no problem. Could you just give us a glimpse of the challenges you have met in trying to advocate and as well fund the same in the African continent? And also, not just the challenges, but where the opportunities lie.
Yeah, thank you very much. As Trademark Africa, I mentioned earlier that we are focusing in two areas, one on the trade environment and the other one on working with the private sector. One of the things that we realized with the trade environment in relation to SPS regulations is that many countries have outmoded completely. I mean, they are old and not relevant in supporting.
I want to borrow your English.
Outmoded.
Okay. Let me write it down. Continue.
So they need to be modernized. In short, their systems need to be modernized. There are old regulations based on law, and the laws were done not based on science. And these are scientific things. So you can imagine, you can only see things in the eye of the law. Do you comply or not? And if the law is deficient, then the risk is not addressed. So that is a big challenge. This needs to be modernized, risk-based.
All right.
On the private sector, the big challenge is, as you mentioned rightfully, one is awareness of the requirements of different countries. So if you are trading across the continent with over 50 countries, you can imagine you need to understand, to know the requirements of each country as you move your goods. Think of it this way, that if you are moving goods from South Africa and you are driving all the way to Egypt by road, how many rules you are going to comply with in different countries? And so you can imagine that kind of challenge that you may face as private sector. And so the opportunities therefore that exist, that we can actually use industry self-regulation mechanism for the private sector to allow them do all this education, information sharing, capacity building, and voluntary certification as to support the compliance to the various requirements. But in the public sector, a lot of investments are required in infrastructure, both hard and soft, and training, adequate inspectors, laboratory capacity, risk assessment capabilities. All this is required in the public sector. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Now, just one more before you put the mic down, is in terms of just to know, now that you are talking about modern things, could be just one example of where TMEA is involved in use of technology and involving stakeholders so that you are able to, of course, reach the stakeholders through any given value chain.
Yeah, I think one of the value chains, since I've already mentioned grain and the AGC is here, let me make reference to the grain sector.
Yes.
So we have, Trademark, worked with the East Africa community. Of course, we're also working at the continental level with the AUC to make sure that the relevant frameworks at the regional level are aligned with the SPS policy framework, and ensure that coming down to countries like in the various partner states in the East Africa to align their food safety systems. A case here will be in Kenya, where we worked with other partners to improve the, develop or modernize the food safety legislation. And now we have a new law which is about to be enacted in the country. But specifically back to the value chain like grain, we have worked with the EAGC and their members to do training in Tanzania, over, I think, 5,000 producers. Uganda, implementing third-party assurance programs there with millers, and in Kenya to invest in mycotoxin decontamination equipment, where you have done everything and you are still having a challenge of aflatoxins. So we have heavy investments where we have 2 plants installed in Kenya, one near Kenya-Uganda border, so that maize not meeting the aflatoxin limits will not be stopped, but rather allowed to come into Kenya, but channeled through that facility for treatment, decontamination, and then allowed to go through. And we also worked with the association EAGC to capacity build their members on various things, so they have guidelines and different documents, and so the capacity building is devolved to them, so that the industry is able to do these things on their own. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You know, I have a question on that technology, but before I ask, we have been talking a lot. Maybe I just take a few, maybe 2-3 questions, then we can close the session. So I can see 1 hand, 2 hands. I can take 2 here. Any from here? Okay, so if only 2 is available this side, can I see the hands? Let's start from the back. You are 2 or 3. Can I see the hand? I can only see 2. Fine. Let's begin with.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. As I introduced myself earlier, I'm Clive Ayoko. I'm a freelance journalist. And my question is, a few decades ago, a Peruvian economist by the name Hernando, I'm thinking you agriculturists know him, he actually proposed that land should be made bankable assets. Now, 90% of agricultural rural land is undocumented within Africa. So you can't put your land in a bank and perhaps get a loan. And all these things are perhaps linked. If you get the loan, perhaps you can get inputs, you can get fertilizer, you can get all these products which make the food you produce actually quite easy. So my question is, 90% of land not having titles, not being mapped is actually more of a cautionary tale to even investors. My question is, why is this particularly happening? Is it a bureaucratic thing, and why don't you have the agricultural land in the rural areas? Why is it not documented? Why don't the farmers have titles which they can perhaps use?
So why land is not documented? I'm not sure whether I'll give that to the president and vice president in one, because he's talking on behalf of Africa. But as you discussed that, the 3 of you are talking on behalf of Africa. Let me get the next question.
Hi everyone, my name is Shadrach Agaki. I'm a communication and policy expert. Now we're talking about policy dialogue, and one of the challenges that we have had in terms of policy is not specifically about having a policy, but the coordination of policies. Now we have different organizations and entities that are working on different aspects of agri-food trade. So my question, and I think this could be addressed by each of you in your different capacities. As we stand right now, what is the extent of the coordination of policies that we currently have? Because I believe the challenges with food security and food safety is not about having policies, but the coordination of policies and how we engage within the policy space. Yeah. So I would
So
want
the
to get that
question
from
is,
you. What is the extent of policy coordination within all the...
what is the extent of policy,
Policy
coordination? All right. That is the secretariat. That's where that question will be picked. So I will give to Chiluba, then I go to the secretariat. And then if somebody can chip in, then we can finalize this.
Yeah, thank you very much for that insightful question. Policy coordination is very low because you start with the member states. At member state level, when you, for instance, you take the SPS institutions, how many work together? Very few. Why? Most of them will look at the bottom line. If you come up with a project, you want to help farmers to comply with SPS measures. We are saying SPS measures involves the three sisters. If you go to the Ministry of Agriculture, you will find that other relevant stakeholders won't participate. The reason being that there is no coordination at national level. So as the African Union, we are trying to support the establishment of the national SPS coordinating committees. And these national SPS coordinating committees should have the representation of all the relevant stakeholders. At regional level, we are also supporting the strengthening and the establishment of the regional SPS coordinating committees so that when the international cooperating partners come into the region, they want to support the member states. They need also to announce to the REC Secretariat so that coordination is well done.
Well done. Thank you. Secretary, tell us why land is not documented and yet you exist.
Thank you, Chair. Let me just add one thing.
All right.
On the issue of coordination, and to say that actually the recognition of the importance of having national SPS coordination committee was realized some time back, and the African Union supported some countries to establish national coordination committees. But what happened after the commission drew? The governments were not putting in money to ensure that this committee or the work of the committee continues. So there is that need for, willing, deliberate allocation of resources and ensuring that national committees work. Now to the issue of land, yes, over 60% of our African women are involved in agriculture. They're doing a lot. And 70% of the cross-border trade by small-scale traders is done by women. But when you come to the issue of the means of production, land, less than 30% of women own land. A number of them who own land, co-own them. They don't singularly own the land. And let me also say here that the work of the African Union Commission doesn't allow it to enforce some of the initiatives it comes up with. So that's why there was this deliberate effort using the land policy initiative is all to ensure that we have women owning more land, at least 30%. But again, enforcement of such a noble objective can only happen at country level. Yeah, thank you very much.
So it is very hard for the Secretariat to answer that. I can hear because of the nature.
Answer, but
no.
It
is because of the nature of the arrangement. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Colleagues, I think my panel has been very, very objective and quite interactive, but because of time, we have to come to an end. I will give each of you a maximum of 1 minute. I'm asking for 5 minutes. We started from there, so I will start from here, and just give us your takeaway home message that we can be able to carry in terms of enhancing SPS measures in compliance and anything to improve coordination, because those are two key. So just give us one takeaway message.
Thank you. We need to simplify compliance for small traders.
Simplify.
We need to simplify it, because if you ask a trader to go and get audited and certified, and they have to pay upwards of 100,000 shillings, and they only sell maybe 10,000 shillings, that does not make sense.
Okay.
So we need to find maybe a graduated system of compliance to get all these traders to sell safe food, and first of all to get into the market, and then to understand that safety of the food is also a factor. So please, let's simplify the compliance.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think for me, two takeaway messages. I think the first one is that if we continue working individually in our own different settings, we won't go far. We need to get together, and starting with the farmers themselves and even the SME traders, they need to get together. They need to aggregate, pull together, consolidate, and stop being small.
Okay.
The only cure for smallness is to stop being small. To stop being small is to get together and be big. Then when you're big, you can enjoy the economies of scale.
Like Musila is big.
You enjoy the economies of scale in your compliance because of the cost of compliance. And finally, I didn't let you know that I'm the chairman of the committee at the Kenya National Bureau of Standards for pulses. I chair the TC. That represents the private sector in it. But I also chair the board of the Interfield Food Testing Laboratories, which is a lab that is a joint venture between EAGC and one of our members, Soy Afrique. And we have Nancy here, who is our sales executive. Nancy, if you can stand. So if you have any lab testing for your food, Interfield Food Testing is there for you. Thank
Interesting. You very much. All right. Yes, Andrew.
Two messages to government. Let us modernize our SPS regulations, base them on science or align with international and regional frameworks. For private sector, food business operators have the responsibility to ensure food safety or proper sanitary requirements are in place. Therefore, let us support the private sector, the food business operators, to understand and to implement these requirements. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Let us implement the harmonized SPS measures, because implementation of harmonized SPS measures is going to enhance food security and safe trade. And to achieve that, we need to have effective coordination, effective collaboration, and effective cooperation.
Good. Continue.
Yes, thank you. I'll agree with all that has been said, but here I would like to address the private sector who would like to trade on their borders. Please find out where your AFCFTA national coordination sits, so that you can see whether you can be able to trade your products beyond your borders. There is an opportunity. Others are doing it. You can do it. I'm very happy at the little I've already seen here. Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
I will end where our sister started.
To simplify.
Yes.
All right.
That at ARSO, we have what we call African conformity assessment program. It is called the ACAP. It's a graduated system meant purposely for the SMEs so that they meet the requirements gradually. In this sense, that if you are meeting some level of compliance, you are given certificate, which we call eco-labeling, the eco-labeling certificate. You are given gold, gradually you go to bronze until you reach the platinum. So to the industry, let's use one standard for one certification for one market. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful.